योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचा मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोतं प्रवरं मुनीना पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिं प्रणतोऽस्मि। ओम शांति शांति शांति।
मैं रिकैप कर रहा हूँ। अभी जो है हम लोग पहला चैप्टर जो है समाधि हमने अब तक पढ़ा है, उसके अब मैं क्विकली एक रिकैप करूँगा। तो अभी तक हमने जो है उसके 4 सूत्र अभी तक हमने पढ़ लिए। तो पहला जो सूत्र है अथा योग से अनुशासनम। अथा वर्ड्स का मतलब है कि नाउ देयरफॉर, इट मीन्स इट इज़ गिविंग यू इंडिकेशन कि इससे पहले आपको कुछ अपनी तैयारी करनी है, हमें अपने को तैयार करना है। देन इट इज़ योगा अनुशासनम। योगा से अनुशासन का मतलब है कि आपके कुछ रूल्स हैं। रूल्स का मतलब एकदम स्ट्रिक्ट वो नहीं है, बट यू हैव टू फॉलो सर्टेन वे टू अंडरस्टैंड इट फुली सो यू कैन ग्रास्प इट फुली। पहला तो यह है कि अच्छा मीन्स आपको अपने को प्रिपेयर करना है कि आपको अपने कर्म और भक्ति योगा से अपने को प्रिपेयर करना है कि आपको अपना मन को विचलित ना हो, शांति, और आप प्योर हो। तो उसका पर्पज़ ये है कि आप वो प्रिपेयर पहले कर चुके हैं, तब आपके योगा के रूल को अंडरस्टैंडिंग आपकी इम्प्रूव। तो पहला सूत्र तो उसी के बारे में आपको बताता है। सेकंड सूत्र है योगस्य चित्त वृत्ति निरोधा। तो इसमें 4 वर्ड है, योगा, चित्त, वृत्ति या निरोधा। वृत्ति इज ए पैटर्न, कॉन्शियस का जो एक पैटर्न है, नोइंग पैटर्न है, आपको उसको निरोधा मीन्स उसको रोकना है। रोकना का मतलब ये नहीं है कि आपको सबको छोड़ देना, आपकी अवेयरनेस होनी चाहिए और आपका मन की जब आपको उसके बारे में मालूम होगा तो नोइंगली यू कैन कंट्रोल इट और यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड। सो आपके कॉन्शियस को उसके बारे में इसमें बताया। हमने इस प्रोसेस में इसमें ये भी पढ़ा था अपनी बॉडीज़ के बारे में कि हमारे सूक्ष्म बॉडी, क्रॉस बॉडी और कारण शरीर क्या है उसके बारे में पढ़ा था। उसके साथ साथ फिर हमने डिस्कशन अपना मूड के बारे में भी किया था, जिसमें कि 5 स्टेट हैं जिसमें कि हमारी वो है। तो एक मूढ़ा, क्षिप्ता, क्षिप्ता, एकाग्रता या निरोधा। तो उसमें हमेशा हमारे जो 3 मेन गुण हैं, तमस, रजस और योगस, उनका जो है कौन सा किस समय डोमिनेशन है। तो हमारा मूड से अंडरस्टैंडिंग है, मैं उसके कौन सा हमारे पे डोमिनेंट है उसको हमें अंडरस्टैंड करना है और अल्टीमेटली हमें समाधि जो अल्टीमेट उसमें पहुंचना है। तो हमारा फर्स्ट चैप्टर में तो हम लोग इसके बारे में बात। सेकंड, थर्ड हमारा जो है, और ये सब जो हमारे बता रहे हैं ये योगा का एक्सप्लेन कर, उसका पर्पज़ क्या है, ये सभी हमारा जो पेज है हमारा उसका पर्पज़ क्या है, उसकी डेफिनेशन क्या है। तीसरा सूत्र जो हमारा है तदा द्रष्टु स्वरूपे अवस्थानम। द्रष्टु मीन्स जो सीयर जो है, स्वरूप मीन्स ओन एसेंशियल नेचर। स्वरूप मीन्स आपकी अपनी नेचर क्या है, अल्टीमेटली आपकी। और हम लोग हमेशा कहते हैं हमारी नेचर तो हमेशा खुश है, मतलब आपके अल्टीमेटली है। तो स्वरूपम उसको पहचानने के लिए ये है, और उसके लिए अवस्थानम अल्टीमेटली इस्टेब्लिश अपने को उसके बारे में करना है। तो इसमें क्या है, मेनली क्या है कि विटनेसिंग योर कॉन्शियसनेस, उसको एक्सपेंड करना है आपका। जब आपकी ये सब चीज़ें, बाकी चीज़ें आपको अफेक्ट नहीं करेंगी, आपके जो है हम कहते हैं कभी दुखी है, खुशी है, ये सब चीज़ें हम लोग समझते हैं कि हमारा पार्ट ऑफ हमारा रेगुलर है। When you start it is understanding it's not 50% kind of thing. When you withdraw from there and look inside it is, so you are in a better position to enter. So आपका पर्पज़ ये है कि उससे आपको अपने को अलग करते हुए उसके समझने के लिए, समझेंगे तो आपको उस अवस्था में पहुंचने की है। मतलब अल्टीमेटली हमारा तो वही है कि प्रिंसिपल के सब लेके सेल्फ रियलाइजेशन की तरह में हमारा गोल है इसके लिए। तो हम इन सब चीज़ों से अपने को अलग करें, अंडरस्टैंड करें, तो फिर हम लोग। और लास्ट वाला सूत्र है वृत्ति स्वरूप है, कि जब वृत्ति जो कि आपकी मॉडिफिकेशन वाली चीज़ है, उसके लिए जब आपने एग्जाम्पल दिया था कि आप कहीं मूवी देखने जाते हैं, थिएटर जाने हैं, तो आपको उस करेक्टर में ही घुस जाते हैं, है ना, तो आप उसमें फील करने लगते। उसको जब आप रियल लाइफ में आपने करने लगे, जब आप कुछ बात, ये तो रियल नहीं था ना, आप करेक्टर से थे। ऐसी चीज़ से जब आप उससे बाहर निकलते हैं और अपनी लाइफ में भी अब आप उससे बाहर निकलेंगे, उसको ऑब्जर्व करना शुरू करेंगे, देन ओनली यू कैन रीच टू दैट समाधि स्थिति. सो वो जो कि अल्टीमेटली होगी.
So thank you so much, Pradeep ji. So we saw the summary of the last 4 sutras. A lot of what Pradeep ji talked about, some of the main points around the gunas, the vrittis, the different states of our mind. We're going to try and bring it all together as we start now looking at the 5th sutra. The 5th sutra is starting to talk about the vrittis in more detail. So today we will do sutra number 5. I will read it, I'll explain it. The 5th sutra is vrittayah, pancatayah, klishta, klishtaha. Okay? So vrittayah is vritti, pancatayah is 5 kinds. Klishta means painful, aklishta means pleasant. So what the sutra is talking about is Patanjali Maharishi is basically saying the vrittis are classified into 5 types that are both painful and pleasant. So a total of 10. Now what these are, we're going to talk about in the coming sutras. But today, on this particular sutra, we're going to focus on a few things. One, we're going to focus on what is causing a vritti or a state of mind to be pleasant versus unpleasant. And we're going to take vritti in itself and break it down to a very, very deep level so that we can understand in real terms how this happens in our day-to-day life. So the essence of the sutra is we are all sitting in this garden. Obviously, there's flowers, we see leaves, there's water, we're able to hear it, the breeze is beautiful, the sun is amazing, everyone's feeling good, right? We're using our eyes to perceive the nature around us, and as we perceive that nature, it creates a certain manifestation or vritti, as we call it, in our mind to feel good. Now, the same eyes when we leave, the same mind when we, let's say, see a roadkill, very drastic turn, right? When we're driving and we see a dog or something, or a squirrel or something that's been run over, your mind automatically doesn't feel good. But you're observing or perceiving that with the same set of eyes. So what is changing is the vritti that happens inside. So the way your brain processes what is pleasant and versus unpleasant. If the root cause is how you perceive something on the inside, then if you want to bring about change in your perception, you have to work internally. That is what Patanjali Maharishi is trying to get at. If you want to change something, it's got nothing to do with the outside world. The outside world is what it is. But the way you perceive it and process it on the inside, that is different between someone who's evolved versus someone who's not. Okay? Now what we'll talk about is we'll take this concept of vritti, okay, which we're talking about it in terms of patterns or manifestations of the mind, and we'll break it down. Vrittis happen when a desire occurs. Desires occur when there's a stimulus. So if you're walking and you see something, or you hear something, or you smell something, there is a stimulus that creates a certain desire in you to either want it or not want it, which then creates the vritti. So if we look at our desires in life, you can at a high level break them down into 3 categories. So you can break them down into desire for wealth, desire for lust, physical, desires, or even emotional intimacy, even desire for, certain relationships, partnerships, so everything to do with our human relationships, and then desire for fame, recognition. That doesn't mean, I want to be a celebrity. That could even mean something like, I wish someone said I did a good job. I wish someone recognized what I did. At a high level, you can bucket your desires in these 3 buckets. When we talk about the gunas that Pradeep ji just referenced, these desires manifest in all of us at 3 levels. So at the level of tamas, at the level of rajas, and at the level of sattva. The most important thing that we're going to be talking about now when we take examples of how this manifests is that there's nothing that's good or bad. We're not saying sattva is the best tamas is not good. We're not labeling anything. We're just going to observe how this manifests in all of us. Because whether you are someone who's never come across spirituality, or you are, someone who's extremely evolved, all of these exist. It's just the question of at which level they exist, but they do exist. So it's only the completely enlightened, liberated souls, so to speak, that go beyond these three levels where it doesn't impact them. So it's really important to recognize where we fall. And the purpose of today for us to talk through this is really, I'm hoping, at the end of this, when we're taking this away and thinking about it, you have something to look at and say, where do I fall? Where are my traps? What are the different desires that usually catch me, that keep me back from moving forward? So the first one, we're going to talk about tamas, and we'll associate it with raga, likes. So things that we desire, things that we like. Tamas manifests at a very basic, gross level of wanting something. Raga also can be associated with hunger, desperation at the tamas level. So you are operating from a place of fear and deep insecurity. Okay, so something like jealousy. So I made little statements here that is not something we say out loud, but maybe internally they're dialogues for us to be, connect with. So, for example, I want what she has, or I want what he has. Is raga manifesting at a very tamasic level when there's envy and jealousy that, comes in? Same thing. Oh, I don't want to lose this watch. This watch is very precious. I don't know what I'd do if I lose it. The attachment to certain material things or even emotional things, relationships, or something like, I wish I could have had more of that. I'll be happy when I have more of that. When you're in the moment of accumulating and accumulating and accumulating in your life, then your raga or your deep sense of liking, the polarity of that manifests at the tamasic level. Now the same raga, when you move it up to rajas, it's a very similar hunger, except that it does not have as much of a high intensity of insecurity. So this could be something like, I want to keep getting promoted and climbing up the corporate ladder, and I want to make it to the top in this organization. Now, those are good goals to have, right? And this is where we come into, it's not bad to want something. These are good ambitions to have. However, it is still a desire. It is still a desire that we put our prana or our efforts into. It is still a desire that influences how we think and interact with people. I want growth, recognition, rajasic qualities of desire. Now, the beauty of rajas is it can go either way. When you have those desires, but you're deeply rooted in insecurity, the way it manifests is completely different from, I have, let's say, ambitions of growth and recognition, but I want to take people with me while I move up. That is different. That is also desire, but it's more sattvic because it's focused on the greater good. And that's where sattva comes in. When you're highly successful, when you see highly successful people, setting up charities, wanting to do philanthropy, wanting to, do a lot of volunteering, that is also a desire, but it's at the sattvic level. So our goal when we look at desires in general about what we want in life is to move as close to sattva as possible. It is to move up from tamas, because the impact, the vrittis it creates in your mind is completely different than when you're at the tamasic level. And the same thing when we look at the dveshas, okay, so the dislikes. At the tamasic level, it could sound something like, what this person did was absolutely wrong, he deserves to be punished. A bit of that, righteousness, judgment that comes to someone. And this doesn't have to be a personal thing that you say in your mind looking at someone. This could even come in conversation when we talk things like politics, when we talk things like religion, when we talk just in normal conversation. You could have certain biases that put you in these interlocks and traps. And the key is using awareness to break out of it. When you have something like, okay, tamas, rajas, and sattva, you know where you fall and you're trying to elevate yourself. And the same thing, something like, oh, did you see how she was with her child? Or did you see how he acted with it? Like, you don't know the full story, but you're forming opinions, you're forming biases, just looking at someone. These are all dveshas that are at a very tamasic level. The same dvesha at a rajasic level involves things like, let's say, promoting yourself at the expense of someone. Oh, I'm not like her, or I'm not like him, I'm very disciplined, I'm like this, like at the cost of someone. Which, I think generally self-promotion is something in the corporate world we all have to do at times, because that's just how it's structured. We move up the ladder, to be honest, but how we do it, because you would have seen a lot of people who do it at the expense of others, right? So those are qualities where Rajas starts to move away or towards tamas, and you need to be very careful. Same thing, dvesha, dislike at the sattva level can sound something like, oh, I don't want to mix with certain group of people because I'm very special. I have certain values that I'm very elevated. I cannot be with certain groups. And doing that with a sense of dvesha, because obviously all of us on the spiritual path, we try and avoid situations and things and people that stimulate us in the wrong way. So it's good to set your boundaries, but doing it with a sense of dislike, hard dislike against a certain group or against a certain thing, is where we end up getting trapped. Okay, so that's your sattva, rajas, tamas for raga, dvesha. The third one is moha, illusion or attachment, or you can call that. At the tamasic level, it is something like, I cannot live without this person, or I cannot live without this thing, or I'm scared this person will leave me, or I'm scared my children will leave me, they won't love me. It's a deep, deep sense of insecurity, attachment that comes where you are unable to independently identify yourself as an individual being, and you are attached to another entity that you're in desperation, and you have a lot of paucity consciousness. Oh my God, if this doesn't happen, my life is ruined, sort of a thing. Okay, so that is moha, illusion, completely being drowned in that tamasic nature. And rajas, the way rajas operates, again, oh, I need to be good with so and so because they'll take care of me, or I need help from so and so I need to act a certain way. That is rajas, where you're trying to match, a bit of give and take. You're creating relationships, or you're keeping up relationships because there is an exchange. And rajas is, I will say, the most slippery slope, because it's right in between. For us grihasthas, that's something we do in and out, even with good intention, right? So the question is, the key is not to be trapped by it. That is the key, because you are going to fall into you go out networking, want to build your business, you got to go network, you got to shake some hands, you got to say things to people. The question is, how trapped are you in that? That is the key. And the same moha at the sattva level could be something like, japa is the only way to reach God. All the other practices are useless. This is the only practice. I do this because it's the only way, it's my way or the highway. Spiritually, this is the best. The spiritual competition, as I like to call it, is my way, is the best way to realize the self. A lot of people who claim to be realized and are on the path sometimes fall into this trap. They absolutely fall into this trap where they think this certain one way is the only way. So when we look at all of this, the vrittis that happen within microseconds in our brain have a long pattern of manifestation, a deep-rooted pattern of manifestation. Where we see this, where we're able to catch it, is through awareness. It's when we are aware, we're actually able to break it down in these steps. So even if you're sitting and saying, a certain movie or this person was like this, even commenting on someone, right? Even things we do casually, if you actually go deeper into the analysis, it is a manifestation of what you're struggling with internally. It's a reflection of us than anything outside. So the big, for today, and when I share this, I'll try to make a table that can be digitally shared so everyone can print it out and things. One of the exercises I did with this several months back is really every day. Anytime I felt I was in a conversation that was, I call it a slippery slope conversation, like where I'm having the conversation and something inside me, because of the sadhana we're all doing, that awareness is constantly watching. Something inside me is like, maybe don't participate, pull back. You don't need to be a part of this. Every time that happened, I went back to the sheet and I tried to mark where I was, on this table. And for a lot of us, it is between Rajas and Sattva. When you're doing regular practice, there are very deep pockets that fall into Tamas. And those are what I will call our personal gitchis that we all need to work on, right? Each of us have that. But it's a very good exercise, I found, to be aware, fully aware, when you go through your day, at work, at home. And automatically, the biggest change I saw was I always paused before I said anything. Always. Gave it a moment before I contributed to anything, before I even thought about it, before I even created a bias or anything for myself. It created space. So everything we're talking about with the vrittis and everything is to give us space, to slow everything down, to break it down to that level, so that you can be like, you know what, I can make a choice. The space is given so you can make a choice. Because otherwise, you're doing everything unconsciously. You're not making choices. It's taking you along. It's a good self-analysis exercise.
So I thought Sattvic was the highest level.
Yes.
But it sounds like the examples you gave.
You said Sattva seems supposed to be the highest, but then based on this, you feel like the ego is present.
Yeah.
So the ego is present at all levels. When we talk about our desires and traps, between Tamas to Sattva, they get rarefied. So the examples we gave, like I said, we are taught, yes, Sattva is better than Tamas for sure. But when you look at Rajas, it's an interesting concept of how it is combined. Rajas with Sattva is very much required for action, to actually manifest something. It's like Shiva and Shakti. You need the Shakti to make things happen, right? That is the power that Rajas brings. Ego is present at all levels. The question is, how much has the ego submitted to that higher consciousness is the difference between the three levels. At the Sattva level, the ego is aware that it's thinking about these things. The ego is aware that these are vrittis. The ego is aware that it is a little baby in front of the bigger consciousness. At the Tamas level, the ego thinks the opposite. It's very egocentric. So ego is present at all levels. As long as we are born here and physically identified with the body, the three gunas exist. It's when you are completely enlightened and liberated as a soul that we talk about the gunas. You are gunatit, right? Otherwise, you're trigunatmak. Everything we touch and see is trigunatmak. It exists at all three levels. So ego is there at all levels. It's just a question of how rarefied it is and how much in surrender it is with the bigger, higher consciousness.
At the end of the day, is to sort of diffuse the thinking mechanism before you change it into an action.
Correct.
Right? Because you want to pause and reflect, okay, if I actually make an action out of this vritti or thought that I'm having, does it have an inclination towards being tamasic or rajasic, or is it indeed the right action to take?
Yes.
Right? And that's what you mean when you say you become more conscious about it's a choice.
Yes.
That's when it actually becomes a
Yes.
choice rather than a simple reaction, right?
Correct. And the most important thing is for this to become very organic. Because right now when you're starting off, it feels like work. Because you have to really pause and think, and you're going to have a headache being like, oh my God, this feels like too much thinking.
Gymnastic.
But yes, yeah. But over time, as you quieten down, as you tell yourself to, give you that space to make the choices, then you truly feel like you are in control of what impacts you versus not. because you choose what you want to associate
You
with.
know, what I find these days after starting at Mokshadham is I'm able to control a lot of anything that impacts me directly, right? I'm really good at controlling and being able to. But sometimes I feel like when I observe other people, which it doesn't really impact me at all, somebody like a relative or something, somebody did something, then you become judgmental. Why did he do that? Like, that's not right, or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, how do I get away from those? Like, I, want to rise up, right? Like, for example, it doesn't even impact you. So why are we being so judgmental?
No, it's very true. And there are a lot of things that come up in our minds that we don't necessarily control. Like, it comes up. What we control is what we do with it. So for a lot of us, these thoughts come up. In fact, you could even have emotions all the way up until here, but you don't actually say the words. We go through those as well. You choose how you want to respond. So I think the process of things coming up is, there's an unconscious, subconscious aspect to it too. But as you do sadhana, that starts to diffuse. So what you're describing, you have gone from, let's say, because of your own spiritual practice, Mokshadham, and everything you're doing, your efforts, you've gone from not letting anything get to you to maybe looking at someone else and trying to understand, okay, why are they not acting like me? With time and with more practice, you're probably also going to transcend that and say, yeah, you are you, I am me, we are here. We're all in the same spot. So I think it takes time. The key is, like you said, what do you do with that thought? Do you hold on to it and do you create bias against someone? Or do you become aware that, yeah, okay, they're different. They're not on this path that I am. And they're responding with whatever level of evolution and maturity that they have. Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, it's not to say it's good, bad, ugly. It's not like that. It has its purpose. Every one of those has its purpose. It's where you slot it in. If you really look at tamas, that's what we do at night. We go to bed, right? And we sleep. That is a tamasic activity. We need that. The body needs that. So it's really to create awareness. It's not to be judgmental on your own thoughts. I think that's key. So if you're thinking about someone a certain way, that's just how you think about them. Now, get back on track or change it or accept it and move on. So it's not to say, I don't want this thought to come. That is what Patanjali Maharishi is saying. Don't suppress. No, not to suppress. It's not a suppression activity, purely a self-learning and awareness activity. That's the purpose of trying to break it down to the level that we did, because unfortunately we all live with, not unfortunately, but we are not in the mountain, isolated. We all live with everyone, right? We are grihasthas, exactly. So we need these tools to keep checking us, to help us out.
But that awareness is the key.
Yes.
That you are aware of your thought.
Yeah.
Which is very good. That is the right.
I mean, you could go through this and not be aware, right?
Yeah.
That is another option.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Put in that situation.
Yes.
Mainly, it's a lesson for you.
Yes.
It is a question of how like, let's say the slippery slope that you mentioned, and you are in a particular situation where you're not comfortable.
Yeah.
And the discussion or whatever, the conversation is not going, and you don't feel comfortable in that situation. You come to that pause and reflect, but how do you actually respond? You want to respond in a way, you don't want to really, one is offending, but also doing the right thing, and you don't want to take on too much of that into yourself, because it's going to impact you also. When you are in that tight spot, what do you do, or how do you respond? I know it's...
One of the things I have found helpful is acknowledging. So if I'm with someone and there's a lot happening and it's not something I can take on, I don't really respond with the solution. I just acknowledge. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. That must be really hard. That must be hard. Yeah, it's hurtful. And redirect to where it's possible, right? It's not that you're always going to have a positive outlook or positive turn to something, but it's very important to recognize how much you can take. because it truly is a slippery slope. You think you have a certain capacity, you've done your sadhana really strongly, and then you meet someone and they blow you out of the water, right? And you're back to square one. You're like, wait, what happened? I was such a Zen person all this while.
Right?
And then you meet one person. It takes one person to say one thing, and you're like, okay, my 6 months of work has gone down. But that is actually good, because then you're like, okay, I need to go back and do this, because this is something that you're going to work on throughout your life. Absolutely. This is more about the destination than the end. It is something you're going to do all your life. If you thought it was done with your parents, it's going to start with your spouse. If you thought that was done, it's going to restart with your kids, your co-workers. They're going to come from everywhere. So I think it's really, definitely, if you have a choice to pull away from a situation and protect yourself, I'm always aware of that, while also being there for another person when I need to, in a way that I can. Because what you described is very true. Sometimes you're put in a situation and it's a lot that someone has unloaded onto you, or you're kind of caught. Acknowledging and not really giving into it has helped me, because automatically it starts diffusing. They also say, yeah, I know. Okay, anyway, what else is happening? And then you can talk about something else if the moment calls for it. But yes, it's a very specific situation.
एक मराठी में कहावत है ना, अत्ता माझा सटकली. सुना है सबने? मतलब अभी मेरा दिमाग गया. If you are facing a situation of person who is pushing your buttons, right? So उसमें 2 things करने के लिए होता है. First of all, awareness कि this is my limit. इसके बाद मेरा दिमाग ख़राब हो जाता है, ठीक है? तो वो अवेयरनेस कि हाँ, इससे ज़्यादा मैं टॉलरेट नहीं कर सकती उसका बिहेवियर या कोई भी बिहेवियर. सेकंड, वर्क ऑन योर साधना कि मेरे में ही कमी है, मेरा टॉलरेंस लेवल हाई नहीं हुआ है. दूसरा, भगवद गीता में बोला गया है कि जब भी कुछ ऐसा हो रहा है, जब आपको लगता है कि आपका ईगो, अहंकार हर्ट हो रहा है या खतरे में है, क्योंकि अहंकार ही हर्ट होता है, एक रोल इज़ गेटिंग हर्ट, राइट? वट एवर रोल यू आर प्लेइंग एज अ मदर और डॉटर इन लॉ, उसमें कूर्म मतलब कछुआ जैसे विड्रॉ कर लेता है ना लिम्स अपना, वैसे आपको अपने सेंसेस विड्रॉ करना है. तो कैसे आप करेंगे? एक साथ फोकस ऑन योर ब्रेथ और फोकस ऑन समथिंग, है ना? प्रत्याहार टेक्निक बोलते हैं, विड्रॉइंग योर सेंसेस. सो यू हैव टू यूज़ योर मेथोडोलॉजी व्हाट यू लर्नड इन योगा क्लासेस एंड स्टार्ट यूटिलाइजिंग इट देन एंड देयर. और इससे भी एक बड़ा मेथोडोलॉजी है, इफ़ यू हैव अ वेरी हाई गोल ऑफ योर लाइफ, कोई बॉदर नहीं करेगा. जैसे आपके घर में आपके बच्चे की शादी है, तो छोटे मोटे फिंगर का पेन दर्द नहीं करेगा, हमें कुछ फ़र्क नहीं पड़ेगा ना, ही विल स्टिल डू एवरीथिंग. सो इफ़ यू हैव रियली अ हाई गोल, यू नोबडी विल बॉदर यू एक्चुअली इन लाइफ, क्योंकि यू विल रियलाइज इवन टू योर किड्स, जिससे माँ यूजुअली बहुत अटैच रहती है, they have their own karmic journey. What can you do? They have their own opinion. What can you do? तो वैसे एक हायर गोल रखिए कि उनका अपना एक लाइफ का पैटर्न है, आपका अपना है. आप अपने प्रिंसिपल्स के साथ रहते हैं, अपने जो भी वैल्यू सिस्टम है, बट दूसरे का वो वैल्यू सिस्टम हो नॉट नेसेसरी. तो वो समझ रहना कि सबका अपना अपना वैल्यू सिस्टम है. लोग अपना लाइफ जीते हैं अपने अपने वैल्यू सिस्टम के हिसाब से. वैल्यू सिस्टम कहाँ से आता है? थॉट प्रोसेस से. तो जिसका जैसा अभी वही है ना, इट्स अ गेम, सत्व रजस और तमस का. तो वो इट्स बिकम्स लाइक अ गेम कि आप न सिर्फ अपना ऑब्जर्व करो सत्व रजस तमस, दूसरे का भी आपको अवेयरनेस आने लगता है. जैसे गायत्री ने बोला कि सामने वाला ऐसा क्यों बोल रहा है, क्योंकि उनके अंदर वो मिक्सचर है. हो सकता है उनमें आपसे ज़्यादा रजस हो या आपसे ज़्यादा तमस हो, बट नॉट नेसेसरली यू आर वेरी सुपीरियर, है ना? सब अपनी अपनी जर्नी में है. एवरीबडी इज़ टुवर्ड्स द सेम गोल. यू हैव टू इमेजिन लाइक अ सर्कल, एंड इफ द सेंटर ऑफ द सर्कल इज़ ईश्वर प्राप्ति, एवरीबडी इज समवेयर इन द सर्कल, समवेयर इन द रेडियस, गोइंग टुवर्ड्स दैट सेंटर. कोई कहीं है, कोई कहीं है. कुछ लोग पेरीफेरी पे ही नाच रहे हैं उनको पता भी नहीं कि जर्नी, बट दे स्टिल देयर इन द सर्कल. समझ में आ रहा है? सर्कल ऑफ लाइफ. तो ऐसे इमेजिन करना है. तो वो अवेयरनेस अच्छा है, बट जजमेंटल नहीं होना उसमें, क्योंकि सबकी अपनी जर्नी है. सानू की पंजाबी में एक वर्ड है, मुझे बहुत पसंद है, मुझे क्या मैं क्यों उनके कर्मों का अपने ऊपर बोझ लूँ, सोचूं, क्योंकि आप ऐसे मोर कर्म बंधन क्रिएट कर रहे हैं अपने लिए. क्रिएटिंग बाइंडिंग्स, है ना? देयर आर 2 टाइप्स ऑफ डिज़ायर, बाइंडिंग डिज़ायर, नॉन बाइंडिंग डिज़ायर. जैसे नॉन बाइंडिंग बताया जो सत्व की तरफ ज़्यादा हो, जो सबको लेके चलता है, नॉन बाइंडिंग है. बाइंडिंग होता है जो आप क्वेश्चन करने लगते हो, ऐसा क्यों, वैसा क्यों, उसने क्यों, तो बाइंडिंग डिज़ायर हो जाता है. ठीक है? एनी मोर क्वेश्चंस?
मैं तो क्वेश्चन
मुझे तो ऐसा लग रहा है हम कोई मूवी शूटिंग के सीन पे कैमरा मैन को तो बड़ा मज़ा आ रहा है.
मेरा एक ऑब्जर्वेशन था. तो आज क्या हुआ कि मेरी बेटी का फ़ोन आया था. माई यंगर डॉटर कॉल्ड अस She lives in the UK. So she called us and she was having a conversation. And I think Shriram and I both have this habit of feeding off of each other, and we get like very like raise our voices and we start like this. And she's sitting there, okay, this is stressing me out. Like, why are you both like getting so upset? Can we have a normal conversation? She said, I think so. Basically, she's telling us that this is not okay. She says, this is not okay. So can we just calm down and have a proper conversation? What I feel is sometimes the way we are brought up with our own close people, we've never been taught to say that. For example, जैसे कोई हमसे ऐसी बातें करता है तो we never say कि तुम क्यों ऐसे मुझसे बातें कर रहे हो, ऐसे नहीं बात करना चाहिए. Like,
हम वैसे ही बात करने लगते हैं.
Right? Yeah, exactly. That's how I do it with Shriram. He starts talking, then I also start retorting in the same way. And then she's getting upset. Like, guys, why are you both raising your voice? Can we calm down? So मुझे लगा कि that's such a nice way as a family, because these are the people that we are going to be with and, who will impact us. So how can we learn and how can we actually say, no, Shriram, that's not okay. Please don't talk to me like that, right? Or he can tell me the same. मुझे लगता है कि if we learn those, at least within our family, I think we'll be so much more happier.
They should learn to say that in a nicer way.
Yeah, like how she said it.
Couple of days back, or even every day, we both have the same issue. She raises the voice, I will raise the voice, and then she will come. And luckily, she is living with us right now. So we are afraid that every time we talk about it, like once she will leave, then who is going to come and maybe between us?
Yeah. We take family people for granted.
Yeah.
Family people, and for us also, is 36 years of marriage.
Yeah.
And like we said, that's it, done. Like another few years.
Everybody is progressing, whether you're doing sadhana or not. Even the most evolved person is progressing towards that center point, Ishwar, that I think Archana ji was just talking about, that circle. Everybody is moving towards that point. The difference is doing it with awareness or not, right? Doing it with awareness, your life is completely different than when you're doing it without, and how quickly you get to that center point. So yeah, I think awareness is the key for sure. Thank you for sharing.
Like I'm at a different state at different place.
Yeah.
Okay. Like here, if I say I feel like more sattvic, I would say.
Yeah.
But then when I'm at the job, when I'm doing things, I'm more rajasic. So trying to balance, not to go towards the tamasic in my action or like thoughts. But I can't be sattvic because you have to do what you have to do. But then at the home, with the family, you are completely tamasic. And I always feel like why I am not as good as I'm at my work or like here, and why they are at the receiving side of like my anger and stuff and frustration.
Yeah.
So
because you're not practicing karma yoga. Simple answer.
Okay.
Yeah, titiksha, sadhan chatushtaya. Karma yoga is the key.
We don't take out our emotions at work for a reason, because we need the job. We need to work with other people. It's only when we come home, because we know our family will love us and be with us no matter what, like we've been talking with, and it's not just from your side. I'm sure your kids or whoever you're thinking of are interacting with you in a way that's bringing that up. So I think it's just being aware that at the end of an 8 to 10 hour day, when you are home after long days of work, when your kids or whoever are home after school, daycare, and your spouse, you're coming together after really using that energy to interact with the outside world. You're finally home and you don't want to have rules. So I think a lot of that is just recognizing there's maybe 6 to 8 at home is going to be chaotic. Just knowing it's going to be chaos. It's going to get ugly. Let us all just do the things we need to do. We're doing dinner, doing the dishes, find the systems you can to put in place, and know that it is just the evening time at home. And obviously, everyone here has much older kids than me, but you know yourself with your older kids, it changes over time. The interactions change. What happens in the evening changes. I think whatever you've described of why can't I keep the same sattva rajas, that comes with sadhana that we do, and maybe doing a bit more of a, I'm going to try something in the evenings. I'm going to try and maybe I'm saying something simple. I'm going to try and count till 10 before I lose it. Or I'm going to tell myself, okay, this is just happening. It's okay. Everyone's kind of letting loose. I think even incorporating those small mechanisms into our lives makes a huge difference. Of course, there is the mountaintop that's karma yoga and sadhana and all that we do, but even simple things day to day that we can do in our homes to make interactions easier goes a long way. By no means are we expected to have the long days at work that we have, come home and be this angelic person all the time, every time. It's difficult. I think that's what we're recognizing here. It's difficult, but we have all the tools to try and make small improvements where we can.
So like the moment you're gonna say something to someone, that will have consequences. And so you weigh those consequences. Right?
Maybe that's my true nature that
Yeah,
I'm
that
just
comes
like
out.
quick
They say
and cool.
filter
Yeah.
free.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's possible.
Then
But
I
again,
need
the
to-
question is, do you want that to be your
No.
permanent?
No. No.
So I think that's
But your
No, the
true
same
nature is Satchit Anand.
Uh-huh.
Your true nature is Satchit Anand.
So maybe you
Yes.
just need to remind yourself
Yes.
this outer version is something else. So I'm going to keep going back.
For everyone who has younger kids, because I do regret every day I did that. When I came home and I was not there, and I was not that person that, I was that angry, or, I need to get so many things done. And I guess it all comes from that. So I think we all need to, so please don't make the mistakes I made, because I regret it. Now my kids are grown up and they've left, and I do regret. Some days it's hard.
Between work and home, I think the difference is knowing your boundaries. And to know your boundaries, you have to first exceed them. Unless you cross your boundary, you will not know the boundary itself, right? Work mein boundaries are easily defined because you are replaceable. At home, you are irreplaceable.
Actually, that's very good.
It's a true fact, right? Even at work. So जब आप तामसिक की बात कर रहे हैं, at work, in my role, I sometimes have to become aggressive and get very tamasic in order to achieve a certain goal, because my team may not understand until they see the end of it. So that attitude and character is much required in my environment to progress the team. उसमें मेरा self progress है, सबका है. They don't understand because there's always a notion of you're not doing it for me, right? तुम्हारा hidden motive है कोई. So communication becomes important. So I think my observation is that at home, and whether it's home or work, what I'm trying to focus more on is know my dharma, because dharma should not change whether काम पर हो या बाहर हो या घर पर हो.
Correct.
कर्म change हो सकते हैं, right? But knowing your dharma, करो. दूसरे के कर्म, जैसे आपने कहा, should not impact your own dharma. That's what I started.
But you made a very good observation there. I think the intent does not make that tamasic in my mind. You're doing something. Yes, you have to be in an environment where you have to maybe be a certain way.
You're in a competitive environment.
Yes, but you're not doing it with the intent of hurting. You're actually doing it with an intent of sattva.
जैसे when you come home, what is that is triggering you? वो ध्यान रखो. घर गंदा ट्रिगर कर रहा है, खाना नहीं बना है वो ट्रिगर कर रहा है, बच्चे के सोने का टाइम हो गया, काम क्या ट्रिगर कर रहा है. लीव एवरीथिंग. फर्स्ट थिंक अबाउट योर पीस ऑफ माइंड. अगर बर्तन गंदे भी हैं, डाइनिंग टेबल बिखरा भी है, डज इट रियली मैटर इन द हायर गोल, हायर पर्पस ऑफ लाइफ? या मेरा हायर पर्पस ऑफ लाइफ है कि हाउ माई किड्स रिमेंबर मी, कि मेरी माँ कैसी थी. हाउ डू यू वांट योर किड्स टू रिमेंबर यू व्हेन दे ग्रो ओल्डर, व्हेन दे टेल देयर किड्स कि तुम्हारी नानी या तुम्हारी दादी तो ऐसी थी, कितना भी हम कुछ भी करते थे शांत रहती थी, फिर हमको अच्छे से समझाती थी. हाउ डू यू वांट योर चाइल्ड टू रिमेंबर यू when they are like 40-50? वो higher purpose रखो life का.
Change it now than later regret.
Your relationship between you and your mind and you and your kids, I think that should be the highest priority. First your mind, because यहाँ से सब manifest होता है, and then that mind comes out as a mother to take care of kids. And how do you want an image of yourself? हमको कोई image create नहीं करना है, लेकिन वो एक bonding create करना है ना. वो bonding कैसा चाहती हो तुम?
At least you made the best effort.
There's a lot of pressure on mothers to have a particular kind of image.
Yes.
The society paints that as you niche ma, shant, sushil,
Yeah. Thank you, Pragya.
पति खुश है, बच्चे धुले हुए हैं, खाना बना हुआ है ना?
ऐसे कुछ नहीं है, exactly.
कुछ नहीं है. वो सिर्फ सास भी कभी बहू थी में है,
Yes.
और कभी खुशी कभी तुम में. So it's good that you feel the way you do, but I don't think you should take that to mean that I have to punish myself because the society expects this standard and I'm here. No. You have to evaluate where this is, and maybe this is right, maybe this is not a little bit right, and then you guide that.
मदर्स का तो रोल है ही, लेकिन फादर की भी एक हम लोगों ने एक पिक्चर क्रिएट कर ली, because that's what the another problem is. So any issue, basically, including kids, so they think there is somebody who will handle it. They don't understand the boundaries of the other person. So that is also important in the whole thing. It says where there is boundaries, there are limitations. It's not only the mother, because mother and father, like this is all interconnected. It is like, have you seen fathers cry? Rarely. It is not expected, because in now society people say it's good to let things go out. Okay? But it's not like, but the way we were growing up, guidance should come. Father responsibility, how your kids has to be developed on the professional level. Although all the mothers were educated, but ultimately it comes back to the father that how he will be guided. It's keeping like as a whole society. We have to understand like these are all interconnected things.
It takes a village to raise a child, बोलते हैं ना. Support system कितना है मदर का, फादर का, वो भी इम्पोर्टेंट है. इसीलिए दिमाग खराब होता है क्योंकि सपोर्ट सिस्टम कम है आजकल, राइट? और कोई बात नहीं है.
ये मैं अर्पित करती हूँ अर्चना, श्वेता और सभी योगा टीचर्स को और अपने सभी योग बंधुओं को. हम निकल पड़े इस यात्रा में योग सूत्रों पर विचार करने बड़ी मात्रा में. यह एक साधना है योग की, हमें खींच रही है आशा मोक्ष की. हमें करनी है अब हर दिन साधना, उपासना में है मन लागना. नियमों का हम करेंगे आचरण, अपनी श्रद्धा गुरुओं के चरण. तत्व बोध और गीता का हम करेंगे अभ्यास, योग सूत्रों से बुझाएंगे साधना की प्यास. मोक्षधाम के योग बंधु हैं हमारे साथ, और इतने अच्छे गुरु लगे हैं हाथ. अब बाहर की आंधियाँ न करेंगी विचलित, हम अपने अंदर झांकेंगे होके एकाग्र स्थित.
Oh my God. अति सुंदर.
Thank you.
Amazing.
So it's one of my tamas exercises. You know how you said when you feel tamasic, you do something?
Wow,
I wrote
can produce something so beautiful.